What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Dog Check. I am Max Loeb, Loeb's Leads here with Eric Metcalf for our first ever monthly mailbag episode, the April mailbag. If you guys don't know what it is, it's a Q&A session where you guys can ask us any question you want regarding Cleveland, the Browns on our socials. If you're not following our socials already, I'm going to give them a quick plug. Instagram is at the Dog Check Pod, Dog Check Pod. TikTok is at the Dog Check, and Twitter is Dog Check Pod. If you guys aren't following, make sure you do. That's how you ask these questions. Before I ask any questions, Eric, how was your Easter? How was your nice little break?
It was good. It was tiring. I was in Texas at the Texas Relays all weekend. Had to jump up at 6 a.m. Texas time so I can get back to Seattle and hang out with my family. But after that, it was good other than being tired.
Yeah, it was a long weekend of travel, it sounded like.
Yeah, how about you?
It was good. It was good. I went back to Boston to see the family. Very much a long weekend of travel for me, too. I'm sure some of the people in Ohio, hopefully the guys in Central Ohio are all right, but there's big storms here, and I flew back in this morning. It was a rough plane ride. Thankfully, everything was safe, but it was very much a rough plane ride. But good to be back here. Hopefully everybody stays safe with the storms throughout Central Ohio today. But I want to start with more offseason stuff because even though it's been slow very recently, there is still a lot of questions about what the Browns can do moving forward and if they can do anything moving forward. And it's a question from Connor James Everett. This is on TikTok. Shout out to you, Connor. Do you think that Andrew Berry has any big free agent moves or trades incoming? And if so, who do you think or who would you like for them to get added to the team?
I don't know if they do. I mean, when you look at this team right now, when we're talking about a trade, who would you want to trade? You know, who do you want to give up to get somebody? And what position is it that you're willing to give up somebody who's a key part in this team? I think if there's someone you can get in free agency or through a trade, I think my number one position would be a bona fide left tackle. And I'm saying that because I'm not saying DeJuan Jones or Conklin can't move over there because we'll get to that question later. I'm not saying they can't move over there. I'm just saying that if we're going to go all in, let's get somebody who we know can play that position, who we know has played that position, as opposed to trying to experiment with Conklin or DeJuan Jones over there. And so if we're looking for a possible trade, I don't really want to give up anyone because I like the parts of this team. But if we're going to do it, that's what I would do.
Ooh, that's very interesting. Anytime anybody talks about the Browns in the offseason, that is one of the two biggest talking points. What the offensive line looks like, who's going to play left tackle, who's going to play right, all that stuff. That is one of the biggest talking points. That might be the first time I have ever heard somebody say the Browns should go try to address it in free agency or through a trade. That's very, very interesting. And, partially makes sense because if you're worried about the transition with DeJuan Jones and you don't trust Jed Wills, you have a roster that's built to win now. So you may as well go try to make the most of it with signing somebody or trading for an older piece. I know the tackle market, as you get older, you can still squeeze a good year or two out of those older guys. And sometimes they're acquirable for a mid-round pick, maybe even a day 3 pick. When I hear that question about what the Browns can get, if they can get somebody, I think a veteran receiver is still an option. I don't think it would be somebody who would come in and be an every down player. I know a lot of people have talked about Jarvis Landry coming back. I think as an emotional lift, everybody would love it. Does he fit in the scheme? Can he do the same things he did a few years ago? That kind of remains to be seen. But a name that I've thrown out, I've heard a couple other people talk about, is Hunter Renfrow. I think Hunter Renfrow could come in, be the 4th, 5th guy, be one of the depth guys inside. Obviously has a very good relationship with Deshaun Watson, play with him at Clemson, caught that game-winning touchdown in the national championship. Could very, very well step in and be a veteran presence, a productive presence, and was a 1,000-yard receiver 2 years ago, but also be a mentor for younger guys like Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore. Even though he's not that much older than them, he's been in the league for longer. He's seen more. He's been through the ups and downs, which a lot of those guys are going through in that receiver room. I think that's a guy that's acquirable for not a lot of money, especially compared to some of the other receivers that are on the market.
This question that has been asked has I could answer so many of these other questions that you posed to me with this one question. And we're talking about, say you're saying a veteran receiver. I like the fact that you're thinking veteran receiver, but at the same time, we got Amari. He's 30 years old. Hunter's a little older than, like you said, Elijah Moore and these guys. I think although we're in win now mode, we still have to think about the future, right? And so when I think of our receiver core, I think we need to get younger and more explosive. We need guys who can go out there and make plays, because that's who we want Deshaun Watson to be. Everybody was so excited when Flacco was going down the field all the last 5 or 6 games last year. And so if we want to see Deshaun Watson do that, we need guys who are explosive. And so when I think about my veteran receiver presence, I get it. But at the same time, at that position, I want to be younger and explosive.
So in saying that, I ask you this. What has been the best move for the Browns this offseason? Has it been bringing in Jerry Jeudy to have that explosive presence on the field, along with Amari Cooper, David Njoku? What has been the best move that Andrew Berry has made this offseason?
To me, it's keeping that D-line intact for the most part. Jerry Jeudy's a big splash, and we're hoping he can be the guy that Denver thought he was going to be when they drafted him. But for me, it is keeping that D-line intact, because that is what made it easier for everybody else on the defensive side of the ball. We're talking about the back end. Those guys didn't have to cover as long, because that rush was coming at every quarterback and putting fear in their eyes. No one was able to run the ball against us. And so by keeping that intact for the most part, I think that bodes well for the defense and where we're headed. Now, people might say Jerry Jeudy, but I think defense, because that defense wins championships, right? And our defense played well enough. We didn't play well on the road this past year, but I think with another year in the system and everything, we got key pieces. We got guys who we think are going to play all the time and not get hurt. And I think they can be a lot better.
Yeah, I'm with you in the sense that the defense was the key cog. The defensive line was the key cog to the defense, excuse me. I'm 100% with you there. They made everybody else's job easier. They kind of masked what sometimes the secondary lacked because somebody was injured. They kind of masked occasional poor linebacker play and helped spur Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah's huge season. I have a very, very interesting one. I don't know how you're going to feel about this, because I don't know how you're going to feel about the backup quarterback situation in general. I think keeping the D-line intact is awesome. It's crucial for the defense. Jerry Jeudy, awesome deep threat. I think Tyler Huntley, 1, as the player, but Tyler Huntley, 2, financially having this deal that's primarily based off of incentives, making a roster, playing. I think that could serve to be one of the best moves for the Browns all offseason for a couple reasons. One, obviously, if Deshaun Watson goes down, we pray that doesn't happen, but if Deshaun Watson goes down, you have a proven backup who can step in, who fits pretty well in this system for, again, not a ton of money compared to Jameis Winston, especially too. You also have a trade piece. And I think we've talked about this a little bit. It's a very real thing now, this quarterback market. Backup quarterbacks are so important. And if you have a team that loses a starter or even loses a backup in training camp, you're now the Browns with Jameis Winston. You're now the Browns with Tyler Huntley. Which guy they would want to keep more, remains to be seen. But you have now a backup quarterback in Tyler Huntley that, again, you can keep on the roster as your backup. It's a very quality backup. Or you can trade him for a mid-round draft pick, and you do not have to worry about much of that financial burden because of the contract you signed him to, because of the way it's structured. I think that's a credit to Andrew Berry in structuring that. And I know we talked about it. When they signed Tyler Huntley, we were not expecting that at all. It was surprising.
Yeah, it was to me also. And I think, when you look at this quarterback room, we know someone's got to go.
Yeah.
Right? And who is it going to be? When we're talking about, God forbid, Deshaun getting hurt, if we're talking about someone going in and playing backup, who do we really want it to be? Do we want it to be Tyler Huntley? Do you want it to be Jameis, or do you want it to be DTR? And so we have all these different guys, and they're kind of similar. They offer the same things, but are we talking about getting younger? Are we talking about being safe with the ball, just being a manager? Or are we talking about someone who we feel has the ability to possibly go out there and win us games? how do we view each one of these QBs that are backing up Deshaun Watson? And so I think that, like you said, it's good trade bait. One of them is, but who do we really want to keep in case something goes down? Who gives us the best opportunity to win games if Deshaun gets hurt? And so that's my thinking when we're talking about this position. I think that just looking at these guys, I'd say Tyler, right? He's more athletic. He's younger. He can run. He can do all the things that we saw him do for when Lamar was hurt.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah,
things that I think we'll be able to do with him. And so I think Jameis is like the veteran presence that you were talking about in the receiver room. I think that's the same thing that he brings to that quarterback room right now. But when we're talking about actually being between those white lines, I think it would be Tyler.
Absolutely. Shout out to Jubal, #1 fan on TikTok for that question too. A very, very tough one to answer. You're listening to the Dog Check presented by Bet Online. We're going to stay on the offensive side of the ball. I know we were just talking about quarterbacks. It's like I talked about 5 minutes ago, the $1 million question from Lucky Penny on TikTok. In your perfect world, your perfect Cleveland Browns world, who starts on the offensive line for the Browns week 1?
Right now, Posick.
Okay.
Center. Antonio, left guard. Taylor, right guard. And then it's Conklin or DeJuan Jones at right and left tackle. Whoever is better at the left tackle, that's who I want to be over there. Whoever is able to make that transition better, that's who I want to be over there. If we have to go, if we're stuck, not stuck, I shouldn't say stuck, that's a poor word, but if these are the guys that we're going to play with, then I need whoever's the best out of those two at left to be that guy, because that's the backside of the quarterback, right? We need him to be able to protect the backside. A lot of times you get the best pass rusher on that side. And so whoever's stronger there, that's who I want to be there. But I want those two to be our tackles.
Absolutely. I think I saw a couple people ask this across the socials as well. How difficult do you think that transition for a guy like DeJuan Jones could be without Bill Callahan now?
Well, that's a very good question, because when you're talking about one of the best to ever coach that position being gone, it makes it hard. But, we picked up guys. We got a coach. We know he coached, or we wouldn't have hired him. If you don't hire coaches if you don't believe they can coach. And I think the onus is on DeJuan Jones and Jack Conklin to go out there and try to better themselves as players, whether it be on the right side or the left side. So the players have to try to get better, as well as the coaches have to coach them to be better. And so, it'll make it rough, but we've all done things that we've never done before. And if we just work on it and we can get reps in at it against, say, a Myles Garrett in practice, it makes it easier to transition a little easier when you're going to game day, because 9 times out of 10, you're not getting a Myles Garrett coming across the line, coming towards you. Mm-hmm. And so if you can get good reps against him, it puts you in position to play good football on Sundays.
Absolutely. I think in a perfect world, I'm with you in the sense that somebody has to transition to left tackle. You can't roll Jed Wills out there week 1 and keep a quality right tackle on the bench. Like that, to me, wouldn't be the worst case scenario. Like you said a couple minutes ago, the Browns aren't stuck at offensive line, right? You got 2 really good guards. You got some really talented tackles. Like, it's just a matter of figuring out the best way to use the talent. I think in a perfect world, DeJuan Jones plays left tackle. Are you with me there?
I'm with you there. I'm with you.
Yeah,
I think he's big. He's strong, athletic. I'd hope that he could be that guy, right? Because it gives you longevity also, as long as he can stay healthy.
Yeah, I think week 1, that's how it looks. I think it's the 3 interior, left side DeJuan Jones, right side Jack Conklin. What they do with Wills remains to be seen, because, the contract restructure is huge where you can keep him on the roster. Granted, they still lose the money because they converted it into a signing bonus, but you can keep him on the roster for less, at least against the cap now. Have him be, your 6th guy, your hybrid fullback Nick Harris type if you really want to also. I know the Browns had some packages with Nick Harris. That's an important role. It's a role that he can fill. Does he want to fill that? That's the question. But, at the end of the day, we saw last year injuries happen. It's a very real thing. So he could be the next man up. But I think perfect world, I'm with you. If Juwan Jones can transition to left tackle, the Browns offensive line is going to be one of the best in the NFL. 100%.
When I think about Jay Will's situation, I think about the fact that when he was in college, he played right tackle. He comes to the Browns, he plays left tackle. And people didn't think he's played that well. He's been injured at times. I think, like you said, he could be that sixth guy. He can be that swing man. We know he's played left tackle, but Conklin's been out a lot. So he could be the guy that can step in there and play that right tackle because we know he's done it in college.
Yeah.
Right. We know he's done it. And so for him, I don't think it's like a slap in your face that if somebody's moved ahead of you and you still have a job. I think it is important for him as a player to make sure that he's able to play both sides and fill in for whoever gets hurt or may need a break. And that happens in the NFL. This is the NFL. People get injured. And so as long as you're ready to fill in one of those two positions, you'll be all right.
Yeah. The embracing of the role as a swingman could be really cool too, because like we talked about, the interior of this line is so talented, and it's been consistent for years. If you can shore up the tackle situation, you're going to have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL with some really good playmakers around you. You keep a quarterback that can make plays with his arm, with his legs upright, and then, hopefully Nick Chubb back week 1 to run behind them. But we do have another question. From Terry on TikTok. This is tough because I don't like to look into the future and give these hypotheticals. But let's say Nick Chubb is not ready to go week 1. Who takes the first carry for the Cleveland Browns?
I think it's Jerome Ford.
Ooh,
okay. And I think it's Jerome Ford because of familiarity, because he's been in this offense. He's been there a couple years. He knows everything that's going on with this team. That's not to say that Deontay Foreman right now can't take that spot because he's been productive in the league on a few teams already, but he hasn't really been a guy who's been the number one. He's come in and filled in and became the number one each time and after playing. But I think it's Jerome Ford. I think Deontay could overtake him if there's no Nick Chubb. But that's the beauty of it all. If you have a bunch of guys who can go in there and possibly be your number one and be successful at it, that bodes well for your football team. And so I like the fact that there's going to be competition in this room as to who is number 1B. Because Nick is 1A as long as he can play. So 1B because they'll have to start before him. I think it bodes well for the team that both these guys can play and be the guy.
Do you think that familiarity is less of a thing in a new offense now, though, with Deontay Foreman coming in and a new offensive coordinator with Ken Dorsey? I don't know. I don't know if familiarity is going to matter as much as it did in the past with the new offense.
When I say familiarity, I mean the coaches being more familiar with him.
Okay.
Right? And I'm not just talking about, say, Ken Dorsey. I'm talking about Stefanski and what he knows that he can do, what he trusts Jerome Ford to do. And Andrew Berry and these guys, what they trust him to do because he's been on this team. And so that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, this is a new offense we're throwing in. He has familiarity with this offense. Nope. I'm just talking about how people feel about the Jerome Ford, the player. And people don't think that matters, but it does.
Yeah, it definitely matters how the coaches look at you. I mean, at the end of the day, if you can't roll out one of the best players in the NFL to carry the football, it's going to come down to trust and belief. It's not going to always come down to, who's going to give us an 80-yard carry to start the game. It's going to come out to which running back can keep us ahead of the chains, which running back can hold on to the football. I'm with you. I do think it's going to be Ford, and I think there will be a committee. I think every Browns fan's kind of on the same page that if Chubb isn't back or when he's back and he's not fully healthy, it's going to be a pretty heavy committee. I think it'll extend beyond Foreman, though. I am personally really excited to see Nyheim Hines. I don't think the Browns have had a true, if you want to call Kareem Hunt a third down back, you can, but a true quick, elite third down running back who can go take a linebacker one-on-one and beat him on a route. The Browns haven't had that in a few years. So I'm excited to see what they can do with Nyheim Hines. I think he's more than a special teamer. Obviously, he'll have his role on special teams if the Browns see fit. Obviously, you have the new kickoff rule, so more kick returns will probably be in place. You could have multiple returners back there as well. I am fascinated to see how deep the committee stretches. I think it's going to stretch deeper than people think. We could see 3, maybe even 4 running backs get touches every game if Nick Chubb is not healthy week 1. And that's not even including Elijah Moore taking a couple snaps in the backfield, because we know that happens.
Right. And that also depends on who we draft as well, doesn't it?
Yeah,
because there is a possibility that we could draft a running back.
Yes.
Who they might think is the guy, who doesn't necessarily have to come off the field at all. I.e. a Christian McCaffrey, because a lot of times in these offenses, the way football is played now, if you have somebody who's versatile and can catch the ball and run the ball and do all the things that you want a running back to do, these guys are playing more now because they're not taking as many hits and such. And so if we can get somebody who's versatile like that, then I don't think the committee is in play as much, especially if Nick doesn't come. I mean, I think if Nick comes, it's going to be Nick, and it'll be a committee because we'll try to take the heat off him, less carries, less hits on him, which I understand. But if it's not Nick, I think I wouldn't be against getting someone who can be every down and just use the other guys as spelling.
Interesting. Wow. Again, that's another one that I haven't really heard. It's, your draft needs, and we'll talk about that in a second. You hear receiver, you hear linebacker, not running back. Definitely not running back, especially seeing all the moves that the Browns have been making. Again, you guys are listening to the Dog Check presented by Bet Online. Eric, you read my mind where I was going with the next question. Dylan Lance asked on Instagram, the draft coming up, what do you think is the Browns' top position need right now? I don't know if running back is the top position need. I think we can kind of agree it's not there. But what do you think is the top position need?
I think receiver.
Ooh, okay. So do you think that's where they lean in the draft then?
I think receiver, explosive receiver. Like I said, when I mentioned it earlier, Amari, he's your guy right now. But he's 30 years old, right? And he's getting older. So I think we need somebody who's explosive, who can play well on a rookie contract, right? And go make plays. Because I think with this offense and what they want to do with bringing in Ken Dorsey, having Deshaun Watson and Njoku, Elijah, Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, I think we're thinking explosive plays. And that's what was exciting about the Browns last year towards the end of the year. Explosive plays. We made explosive plays. And I think a lot of people want to see that because they know that's the type of team that we can be if you go get guys who are explosive. And so in looking from that standpoint, I think a receiver, explosive receiver, gives us more ability to stretch the field and give bigger running lanes for the running backs as well.
Do you think that's where they look in round 2 then? Because obviously they're not picking till middle of round 2. I believe it's pick 54, but they're not picking till round 2. Do you think that's kind of where they lean at round 2?
No, I don't know. It's kind of tough because when you look at it, I wouldn't be against a good D tackle as well.
Yep.
There are so many guys out there that you can get because we're also getting older there, right? Mm-hmm. And so I wouldn't be against somebody who could hold up our offensive line. T'Vondre Sweat from the University of Texas.
There you
somebody
go.
like that, right? Mm-hmm. Because and though he's not explosive on the pass rush of it, I think the fact that you can stop the run. You can stop the run. That's another position that I would think it could be at the top of the list.
Yeah, I mean, we saw last year, if the Browns stopped the run, or if you couldn't run on the Browns, I should frame it like this. If you couldn't run on the Browns, it was over. Like, you couldn't drop back on 3rd and long with Myles Garrett, Za'Darius Smith, Obo Okoronkwo, Dalvin Tomlinson, and anybody else they were sending on blitz. Like, you couldn't drop back and do that on 3rd and long. It was impossible. And when you have sticky enough corners on the outside, it makes it even harder. So I'm with you. The defensive line has to be a huge priority. I don't know if it's the Browns' biggest need, but one need I've always been saying when looking at this draft process, especially as probably day 3 comes around, I think interior offensive line is huge. You have a center who's been okay. He's shown flashes. We have 2 older guards. Like, I think getting depth there maybe not making Jed Wills that swing guy that has to move inside, ensuring that you have bigger bodies on the interior just in case one of those guys goes down. Maybe in a year or two if one of them retires. Like, having backup there to me is huge. I do think receiver is a real thing, whether it's a veteran, whether it's an explosive guy. The really fascinating thing, though, Amari Cooper is being rumored to look into an extension. Andrew Berry is thinking about extending Amari Cooper. I couldn't see it being more than a couple years, but it's a very real thing that Andrew Berry is looking to extend Amari Cooper. Does that put the Browns in a weird place at receiver? Because you obviously have Jerry Jeudy locked up for a few more years. You have Cedric Tillman on his rookie contract, David Bell with less time on his rookie contract, Elijah Moore, very much a question mark as to, what the future holds for him. Do you think that drafting a receiver, or let me phrase it like this. Would you rather extend Amari or hit a home run with an explosive receiver on a rookie contract?
I must be talking some good stuff because I now have this heavenly goal.
I see it. Yeah, I see it.
It's just the sun coming through. So I must be talking some good stuff. But I can see them extending Amari. I just think because he's been productive, and he's done a lot of good things over the course of the last couple of years. And so I can see them. I mean, once again, like I said a few weeks ago, I'm not here to count anyone's money.
True. Yeah.
I'm trying to put the best product on the field that I can. And if Amari Cooper, by extending him, is part of that, then we have to do that.
Okay. I'm with you. It's so interesting because we all see these mock drafts of all these top prospects, all the first round picks. Obviously, the Browns aren't picking in the first round. That 54 spot to me, like you talked about with the defensive tackle, the interior pieces of your defense, defensive tackle, and off-ball inside linebacker. 54, I think it's 54. Middle second round is the perfect spot to take a swing at a guy there. I could see them going linebacker. Where they go at that first pick is going to be super fascinating. But I do think linebacker, defensive tackle, and receiver are the big things. I think as time goes on, obviously running back depth is something you talked about, could be huge. I think interior offensive line help could be huge. But, we wait to see with the draft. You guys are listening to the Dog Check presented by Bet Online. Eric, we're going to finish with a question I think we're going to have the same answer to, but it's a good question. From Colin Fallon on Instagram. With the AFC North being so competitive this year, who comes in last? And before you give your answer, I will say Hard Knocks planning on encapsulating a full division this year. I will be very upset if it's not the AFC North. This is the most competitive division in the NFL, best division in the NFL. Great storylines, especially at the quarterback position, big names on offense and defense. Like, you got to make it the AFC North. But with the AFC North being so competitive, Eric, who comes in last?
I think is most people will disagree with.
I think I know who you're going to say now.
I know you think I'm going to say Baltimore, but no. I'm going to say Cincy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say Cincy. And it's not that they're not a good team and they haven't played good football. It's just the uncertainty. Joe Burrow's been hurt a lot. Tyler Boyd is gone. They franchised T. Higgins, so we don't know where that ends up, right? They're going to have to look to extend Jamar Chase, so we don't know if he's happy or unhappy. They lost their offensive coordinator. I think there's a lot of uncertainty there, and they traded Joe Mixon as well. So there's a lot of uncertainty when we're talking about this team, and so when I look at them, I think everybody is getting better. I mean, Pittsburgh has gotten better, whether you say Russell's good or not, because they still have Justin Fields as well. They've gotten better. The Ravens have lost some people, but I think their culture and them getting Derrick Henry is good for them and helps Lamar with the running games. And the Browns are the Browns, and I think they've done a lot of good things to be better than they were last year. So I think it's going to be sensitive.
Interesting. See, I thought we were going to be on the same page with Pittsburgh. I understand the rationale for Cincy because I go back and forth. I'm still going to say Pittsburgh. I'm going to lean on the team with the best quarterback in the division. You know what? I'll backtrack. Second best quarterback in the division. I think people Not like me saying that Burrow's better than Lamar, but I trust Joe Burrow. I trust what they can do on offense regardless of their coordinator. I also think people forget that with a battered and bruised Joe Burrow, receiver core, defense, backup quarterback for half of the year, they're 8-9? Like, they competed in a lot of meaningful football games up until the last week of the season. We're in the playoff hunt. They find ways to win games. They have pieces on their roster that find ways to win games. And I know people have a lot of negative things to say about Zach Taylor, but the bottom line is Zach Taylor wins games, especially when people push the Bengals aside. I trust the Steelers to win. I trust the Steelers to always be competitive. I don't know how much I trust their quarterback situation. I don't. I think it could work out, and if it's even solid, they're going to be a good team. I just don't know if I can trust it.
And I get it, but we know who they are. I think when I look at the Bengals, and Joe Burrow was hurt, as we well know, but how many games they win the division last year?
I don't even know. Did they win one?
They beat us at the end, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, yes, kind of.
They beat us at the end. That was
it. That's half a game. Yeah.
Right. And so with that in mind, we're talking about you have to win division games.
Yeah.
And I don't really think they're going to win too many division games again. And so looking at that, I don't know. I haven't really looked at the schedule other than they play the same divisions that we play for the most part. Yeah. But I think it's going to be tough on them. And that's why I'm sticking with the fact that I think they're going to be last.
Interesting.
And I don't really like them.
That's also fair. I don't think anybody likes anybody in that division. The way the schedule would work out, the Bengals would play the last place AFC divisional team. So that would be I think the Jets were in last. They would be playing Tennessee, which is going to be funny because it'll be Bengals against their old offensive coordinator. And then they would be playing the Chargers. Chargers finished last in that division. Yeah. So they would be playing those, at least in conference, out of division, which is going to be interesting. Schedules are their own thing. We got to wait a couple months for that. We don't even need to think about that. But this is a great mailbag Q&A episode. Eric, any final questions, any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, I just need the Browns to get better. However we do, if we have to trade, let's do it. If we have to go get some more free agents, let's do it. If we have to move guys around different positions, let's do it. Let's just get better.
Let's get better. Let's do it. We are almost 2 weeks away or 3 weeks away from the NFL draft too. So getting better is very much in the near future. We wait to see if the Browns make any moves between now and the draft. But we will see you guys next week. We appreciate you tuning in, watching, and listening. If you're watching, make sure you follow, make sure you subscribe. And if you're listening, make sure you follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you guys are getting your podcasts. We appreciate you guys. This is the Dog Check presented by Bet Online. Go Browns.
Go Browns.